The bright lights of Nexus Station shone through the viewport as the Terran diplomatic vessel Olive Branch docked at Bay 12. Ambassador Elaine Frost stood with perfect posture as she watched the massive space station grow larger. She had made this trip many times over her 15-year career representing Earth to the stars, but this visit felt different. "Final docking procedures complete, Ambassador," said the ship's pilot over the comm system. "Thank you, Captain Rogers," Frost replied. She straightened her navy blue uniform jacket and turned to her aide who stood nearby. "Are we prepared for the meeting, Daniel?" Daniel Garcia nodded as he handed her a data tablet. "Yes, Ambassador. I've prepared all the relevant files on the Galactic Concordat and their representatives. The invitation is flagged on page 1. Frost took the tablet and swiped through to the official invitation. Her eyes narrowed as she read the final paragraph. Again. The words hadn't changed since she first saw them 3 days ago. "They're still insisting on military representation," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare a polite but firm rejection of that specific request." Garcia frowned. "This is the 5th time they've asked. The Valaxians seem particularly upset by our refusal." "The separation protocol stands," Frost said simply. "No exceptions. The separation protocol was perhaps the most important rule in Earth's approach to interstellar diplomacy. No active military personnel were permitted at diplomatic functions with alien species, ever. Many alien governments found this strange or even insulting. Some thought it showed that humans didn't respect their military enough to include them. Others believed it was a sign of human arrogance or fear. None of them understood the truth. As Frost and Garcia walked through the airlock and into Nexus Station, they were greeted by diplomat Zivnel of the Andari Union, a tall, slender being with pale blue skin and 4 arms. "Ambassador Frost, welcome back to Nexus Station," Zivnel said with a slight bow. 2 of his arms remained still at his sides while the upper pair performed the greeting gesture. "I trust your journey was pleasant." "Thank you, Diplomat Zivnel. The journey was uneventful, which is always welcome in space travel." Frost smiled warmly. "I understand this will be Mr. Garcia's first peace summit," Zivnel said, nodding toward Daniel. "Yes, I'm looking forward to the experience," Garcia replied with a practiced smile. As they walked through the wide corridors of the station, Zivnel's voice lowered slightly. "I must inform you that several delegations have expressed disappointment about Earth's usual arrangement regarding military representation." Frost's expression didn't change. She had expected this. "Earth's position remains unchanged. Our diplomatic corps has full authority to speak for all aspects of human governance, including military matters." The Valaxian High Commander specifically requested to meet with his human counterpart, Zivnel continued. "He finds it difficult to understand why Earth refuses to honor this tradition that all other species follow." "I understand his concern," Frost said smoothly. "Please assure him that no disrespect is intended. This is simply how Earth conducts its diplomatic relations." They arrived at a large meeting room where representatives from 15 different species were already gathered. Conversations in various languages filled the air, with translation devices working to keep everyone understood. Frost noticed several military uniforms among the delegates. The sharp angles of Krell battle armor, the flowing ceremonial robes of Valaxian commanders, and the bioluminescent rank markings of the Drexian Defense Forces. High Commander Velzar of the Valaxians approached as soon as he spotted Frost. The tall, ridge-headed alien wore an elaborate uniform covered in medals and rank insignia. His yellow eyes narrowed slightly. "Ambassador Frost," he said, his translator converting his high-pitched clicks into English. "Once again, Earth sends only civilians to discuss matters of galactic security." Frost offered the appropriate Valaxian greeting gesture. "High Commander, it's good to see you again. I assure you I am fully empowered to represent all Earth interests, including security matters." "It is not the same," Velzar said firmly. "How can we discuss defense protocols and military cooperation when your military leaders hide on your home planet? Do they fear to face us?" Garcia tensed slightly beside Frost, but she remained perfectly calm. "I can assure you, High Commander, fear has nothing to do with Earth's protocols. Our system simply works differently than yours." Before Velzar could respond, A chime sounded, indicating the start of the preliminary meeting. The delegates moved toward the large oval table at the center of the room. Frost and Garcia took their assigned seats with a conspicuously empty chair beside them, the spot reserved for Earth's military representative. As the meeting began, Garcia leaned closer to Frost. "They really don't understand, do they?" he whispered. "No," Frost replied quietly, "and we pray they never have to." Later that evening, Frost sat in her private quarters aboard the Olive Branch reviewing the day's discussions. A message notification appeared on her screen, priority communication from Earth Command. She accepted the call, and the stern face of General Patrick Warren appeared. "Ambassador, I've reviewed your preliminary report," Warren said without preamble. "The Valaxians are pushing hard on this issue." "Yes, General. They seem determined to meet with Earth military personnel." Warren's expression darkened. "The Security Council is concerned. The Valaxians are valuable allies, and this continued refusal is straining relations." "I understand, sir, but the separation protocol exists for good reason." Frost hesitated before continuing. "Perhaps it's time to provide some context. Not the full truth, but enough to satisfy their curiosity without compromising security." Warren was silent for a long moment. "What did you have in mind?" "A demonstration. Controlled, of course. Something to help them understand why we keep our military and diplomatic corps separate. That's risky, Ambassador. Less risky than continuing to offend our allies. Or worse, giving in and sending active military personnel to these functions." Warren sighed deeply. "I'll take it to the Council. In the meantime, maintain the official position." "Yes, sir." After the call ended, Frost stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. 15 years of representing humanity to the galaxy, and still, none of their alien allies truly understood what made humans different. They saw humans as physically weaker than many species, with no natural weapons, no exceptional senses, no biological advantages. What they didn't understand was humanity's greatest strength and most terrible secret. Humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. No other species in known space had evolved through such relentless, continuous warfare against their own kind. Human military personnel weren't kept away from peace summits because they weren't valued. They were kept away because even in peaceful situations they were simply too dangerous. As Frost prepared for bed, she received a message from Garcia about tomorrow's agenda. The Valaxians had formally requested a private meeting to discuss Earth's military protocols. She approved the meeting but added a note. "Inform Earth Command. We may need that demonstration sooner rather than later." The truth would have to come out eventually. The galaxy needed to understand why Earth never sends their military to peace summits, not out of disrespect but out of mercy. Lieutenant General Alan Murphy sat at the head of the large table in Earth Command's main conference room. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished surface. Around the table sat the 12 members of the Security Council, each with a datapad displaying the same urgent message from Nexus Station. "The Valaxians have filed a formal complaint," Murphy said, his deep voice filling the room. "They claim our refusal to send military delegates to the Peace Summit shows disrespect for their traditions." Secretary of Defense Olivia Bennett rubbed her temples. "This is the third complaint in as many months. The Krell Empire sent one last week, and the Drexian Confederacy the month before." "They don't understand our reasons," said Admiral Frank Porter. "Can't understand them." A younger man at the far end of the table cleared his throat. Joe Wilson, newly appointed to the council, looked nervous but determined. "Perhaps it's time we trusted our allies with the truth. At least some of it." Murphy exchanged glances with Bennett. She gave a slight nod after a moment of thought. "Very well," Murphy said, pressing a button on the table console. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared above the center of the table. For the benefit of our newer members, let me tell you about the Geneva incident of 2037. The display showed an elegant meeting room. Men and women in suits and military uniforms sat on one side of a long table. Across from them were 7 tall, thin beings with mottled green skin and large eyes, the first alien delegation to ever visit Earth. This was our first formal diplomatic meeting with the Drexian Confederacy, Murphy explained. The initial contact had gone well. They seemed peaceful, interested in trade and cultural exchange. The hologram showed the meeting progressing, with handshakes and what appeared to be friendly conversation. Everything was going according to protocol, until their security minister made what we later learned was a standard gesture in their culture. In the recording, one of the aliens placed both hands flat on the table, fingers spread wide. In Drexian culture, this shows openness and honesty, Murphy continued. But to Marine Captain Steve Harris, who had served 3 tours in conflict zones, the hologram showed what happened next in slow motion. The human officer moved with startling speed. In less than 3 seconds, he had vaulted across the table, disarmed 2 Drexian security personnel, and pinned their leader to the floor with a knife at what appeared to be the alien's throat. Wilson's eyes widened. What happened? Captain Harris saw the spread fingers as a potential signal to attack. His combat training kicked in automatically. Murphy paused the recording. It took us 15 minutes to convince the Drexians this wasn't a planned assault. We nearly lost our first alien allies before we even had them. Bennett took over. After that incident, we established the separation protocol. No active military personnel at diplomatic functions. Period. But surely we could send officers who are specifically trained for diplomatic settings, Wilson suggested. Admiral Porter shook his head. We tried that. The Jakarta incident of 2039, the lunar base misunderstanding in 2041. Every time the results were the same. Our military personnel responded to perceived threats at speeds that frightened our alien counterparts. Murphy resumed the holographic display, now showing a different recording. This one showed brain scans, side by side. This is where it gets interesting, he said. Dr. Natalie Reeves at Lunar Base Alpha has been studying the neurological differences between humans and other species. What she discovered explains everything. The display zoomed in on the brain scans, highlighting certain areas with flashing colors. The average trained human soldier can assess a threat, formulate multiple response strategies, and execute a lethal action in under 1.5 seconds, Murphy explained. The fastest non-human response time we've recorded is 4.3 seconds from the Takayan Imperium's elite guards. Wilson leaned forward. That's a significant difference. It's the difference between life and death in combat, Bennett said quietly. What we've discovered is that other species never evolved the way we did. They didn't spend thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. So what do we do about the Valaxian complaint? Wilson finally asked. Murphy tapped his console again and the hologram changed to show Ambassador Frost's latest message. Ambassador Frost has suggested a controlled demonstration, something to help them understand why we keep our military personnel away from diplomatic functions. That's risky, Porter said immediately. Less risky than continuing to offend our allies, Bennett countered. And far less risky than actually sending active military personnel to these functions. Murphy nodded slowly. I agree with Bennett. It's time some of our allies understood the truth. He pressed another button on his console. Get me Lieutenant Kelly Martinez, she's just rotated back from the Europa outpost, and contact John Douglas from Xenobiology. If we're going to do this, we need the right people. 3 hours later, Lieutenant Kelly Martinez stood at attention in Murphy's office. She was of average height with an athletic build, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. You wanted to see me, sir? She asked. At ease, Lieutenant, Murphy said. How much do you know about the separation protocol? Martinez relaxed slightly. Only what every officer knows, sir. Military personnel are not permitted at diplomatic functions with alien species. Murphy gestured for her to sit. I'm about to tell you why, and then I'm going to ask you to do something unusual. He explained the situation with the Valaxians and the other alien species growing frustrated with Earth's apparent disrespect. We need to show them why we keep our military separate, Murphy said. Not tell them, show them. In a controlled environment that won't cause an interstellar incident. Martinez listened carefully. What exactly would I be doing, sir? We're sending you to Nexus Station as a civilian consultant. Officially, you'll be there to discuss human training techniques in a theoretical context. And unofficially? Murphy's expression was grave. You'll participate in what Ambassador Frost is calling a cultural exchange exercise. Something physical but non-threatening that will demonstrate the differences between human and alien response patterns. Martinez nodded slowly. I understand, sir. When do I leave? Tomorrow morning. Dr. Douglas from Xenobiology will brief you on the various species you'll encounter. Pay special attention to the Valaxians and Krell. They're the most concerned about our policies. After Martinez left, Murphy contacted Ambassador Frost. We're sending Lieutenant Martinez as requested, he said when Frost's face appeared on the screen. She's one of our best, quick reflexes, but excellent control. If anyone can show our allies what we're dealing with without causing an incident, it's her. Frost nodded. Thank you, General. The Valaxians have agreed to a private demonstration. Small group controlled environment. Remember, this is about showing just enough to help them understand, not revealing everything. Of course, Frost replied. The galaxy isn't ready to know just how dangerous humans can be when pushed. As the call ended, Murphy looked out his window at the busy streets of New Geneva below. Humans rushed about their daily lives, most never thinking about how they compared to the other species now sharing the galaxy with them. They didn't realize that the very instincts that had helped humanity survive on Earth made them unique, and potentially frightening, to their new galactic neighbors. The true reason Earth never sends their military to peace summits wasn't fear or arrogance. It was because humanity's capacity for violence was so ingrained, so reflexive, that even their most disciplined soldiers could become lethal weapons at a moment's notice. And that was a truth the galaxy might not be ready to face. Dr. Natalie Reeves adjusted the settings on the large display screen in her laboratory at Lunar Base Alpha. The blue-white curve of Earth hung visible through the viewport behind her, a constant reminder of what was at stake. She turned as the door slid open and Science Attaché Zivkil of the Andari Union entered. Thank you for agreeing to this private tour, Dr. Reeves, said Zivkil. The tall alien moved with a fluid grace, all four of his arms in constant subtle motion. His pale, blue skin seemed to shimmer under the lab lights. Ambassador Frost suggested it might help smooth over some misunderstandings, Reeves replied with a smile. I understand the Andari Union has been one of our more understanding allies regarding the separation protocol. Zivkil's four eyes blinked, in sequence. We respect your customs even when we do not fully comprehend them. Still, I admit to curiosity about why humans insist on keeping their warriors away from diplomatic gatherings. Among my people, it would be considered an honor to include military representatives. Reeves gestured to a nearby chair specially designed for Andari physiology. Please make yourself comfortable. What I'm about to show you has only been shared with a handful of non-humans. As Zivkil settled into the chair, Reeves activated the main display. Images of brain scans appeared labeled in both English and Andarian Standard. This is my life's work, she explained. Comparative xenoneurology, the study of how different species' brains function, particularly in response to external stimuli. Fascinating, Zivkil said, leaning forward. The Andari Science Academy has similar research programs. I'm sure they do. But I wonder if they've noticed this. Reeves tapped a command, and the display changed to show two brain scans side by side, with certain areas highlighted in red. On the left is a human brain. On the right is an Andari brain. Zivkil studied the images. The patterns appear quite different. Now watch what happens when I simulate a threat response. Reeves tapped another command. The display showed a time-lapse of neural activity spreading through both brains. The human brain lit up in rapid, concentrated bursts, while the Andari brain showed a more gradual, diffuse pattern of activation. The human brain processes and responds to perceived threats in under 1.5 seconds, Reeves explained. The Andari brain, one of the quickest among all known species, takes approximately 3.8 seconds. That is a significant difference, Zivkil acknowledged. More than significant. It's fundamental. Reeves walked to another console and brought up new images. Humans evolved as persistence predators on what many alien species would classify as a death world. Our entire history is an unbroken chain of conflict. The display showed historical images: ancient warriors with spears, medieval knights in armor, soldiers from world wars, modern combat troops in advanced gear. For most of our history, we fought each other, Reeves continued. Unlike many species, who evolved cooperative strategies against environmental challenges or external predators, humans perfected the art of killing other humans. Zivkil's lower arms wrapped around himself, a gesture of discomfort. This is not unique to humans. The Krell Empire has a long history of internal warfare. True, Reeves nodded, but the Krell evolved from herd animals with natural defensive capabilities. Their conflicts were largely ritualistic, designed to establish dominance with minimal casualties. Humans had no natural weapons, no protective shells, no significant physical advantages. We had to invent ways to kill, and we got very good at it. She tapped another command, and the display changed to show training simulations. Human soldiers moved through various scenarios with startling speed and precision. Our military training builds on these evolutionary traits, she explained. A trained human soldier can assess a threat, formulate multiple response strategies, and execute a lethal action faster than any other known species. And they do it by instinct with minimal conscious thought. Zivkil was silent for a long moment. And your diplomats? They do not receive this training? Our diplomatic corps is specifically selected and trained for the opposite approach: restraint, deliberation, careful consideration before action. They're exceptional at finding peaceful solutions because that's their entire focus. Reeves paused. Our military personnel are trained for immediate and decisive action when threatened. I begin to understand, Zivkil said slowly. In Andari culture, our warriors serve as both protectors and representatives. They embody our values. That's the key difference, Reeves said quietly. In most galactic cultures, warriors are symbols of power and honor. In human culture, soldiers aren't symbols, they're weapons. She walked to the viewport, looking out at Earth. The first time we met the Drexian Confederacy, a simple cultural misunderstanding led to a human military officer taking down 3 alien security personnel in less than 4 seconds. No one was seriously hurt, but it nearly ended our first interstellar relationship before it began. Zivkil joined her at the viewport. And this is why Earth never sends military personnel to diplomatic functions? Not out of disrespect, but out of respect, Reeves finished for him. We know what our military personnel are capable of. We know how quickly they can react to perceived threats. In a galaxy where cultural misunderstandings are inevitable, putting human soldiers in diplomatic settings is simply too dangerous. This information would be valuable to share with the other species, Zivkil suggested. That's starting to happen now, Reeves said. Ambassador Frost is arranging a controlled demonstration at Nexus Station. Lieutenant Kelly Martinez has been sent to show the Valaxians and others why we maintain the separation protocol. Will this demonstration be safe? Zivkil asked, concern evident in his voice. As safe as we can make it, Reeves assured him. Martinez is highly trained and has excellent control. But even with that, we've taken extra precautions. No weapons of any kind will be permitted, and she's been thoroughly briefed on the cultural norms of all attending species. I appreciate your candor, Dr. Reeves, Zivkil said. This helps me understand your species better. That's the goal, Reeves smiled. Understanding is the first step toward true cooperation. After Zivkil left, Reeves contacted Ambassador Frost via secure channel. How did it go? Frost asked when her face appeared on the screen. Better than expected, Reeves replied. The Andari are naturally analytical. Zivkil grasped the implications quickly. Has Lieutenant Martinez arrived at Nexus Station yet? Just docked, Frost confirmed. The demonstration is scheduled for tomorrow. The Valaxians, Krell, and representatives from 4 other species will attend. Are you sure this is wise? Reeves asked, unable to keep the concern from her voice. No, Frost admitted. But continuing as we have been isn't working. The complaints are piling up, and some species are starting to take our refusal as an insult or a sign of weakness. We need to show them enough to help them understand, without revealing too much. A delicate balance, Reeves noted. Exactly. That's why we chose Martinez. She understands what's at stake. After the call ended, Reeves returned to her data. The neural comparison studies told a story that most humans never considered, that their species had evolved and trained to become one of the most efficient killing forces in the known galaxy, not because they were stronger or faster or naturally armed, but because they had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war against themselves. The true reason Earth never sends their military to peace summits was simple. Humanity knew exactly how dangerous they could be, and unlike most species in the galaxy, they had learned to fear themselves. Lieutenant Kelly Martinez stood in her quarters aboard Nexus Station, carefully putting on the plain gray outfit Ambassador Frost had provided. The clothes were deliberately neutral. No insignia, no rank markers, nothing to mark her as military. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail rather than her usual regulation bun. Remember, Ambassador Frost had told her during their briefing an hour ago, you're here as a civilian consultant on human training methods. This is a cultural exchange, not a military demonstration. Martinez looked at herself in the mirror. Without her uniform, she looked like any civilian, which was the point. The aliens didn't need to know she was one of Earth's most decorated special operations soldiers, with 7 years of combat experience in some of the most dangerous zones, on and off Earth. Her communication device chimed. Lieutenant, the delegates are assembling in Exercise Hall 3. Garcia's voice came through. Ambassador Frost asks if you're ready. On my way, Martinez replied, taking a deep breath. The corridor leading to the exercise hall was crowded with various alien species. Martinez moved through them carefully, noting how they reacted to her presence. Most barely gave her a second glance, just another human civilian in their eyes. The exercise hall was a large open space with padded flooring. Around the edges stood representatives from 6 different species. The ridge-headed Valaxians in their ceremonial military attire, the hulking Krell in their chitinous armor, the slender four-armed Andari, the serpentine Sithar, the crystalline Teluvi, and the small furry Mikra. Ambassador Frost stood at the center with High Commander Velzar of the Valaxians. Ah, Ms. Martinez, thank you for joining us, Frost said as Martinez approached. High Commander, this is Kelly Martinez, our civilian consultant on human training methodologies. Velzar's yellow eyes narrowed slightly as he examined Martinez. You are not a soldier? Not currently, Martinez answered carefully. It wasn't technically a lie. For this mission, she had been temporarily classified as a civilian consultant. Yet, Ambassador Frost claims you can explain why humans refuse to send their military to diplomatic functions, Velzar said, skepticism clear in his voice. I hope to demonstrate rather than just explain, Martinez replied with a polite smile. Frost gestured to the center of the room. We've arranged a series of simple physical exercises to illustrate some of the differences between human and alien approaches to various situations. The delegates moved to form a circle around the open space. Martinez noted how each species moved differently. The Krell with heavy, deliberate steps, the Andari with flowing grace, the Sithar with a silent glide. For our first demonstration, Frost announced, we'll show basic reaction times to non-threatening stimuli. One of Frost's aides set up a simple device in the center of the room. When activated, it would emit a light signal, and the participant would touch a sensor pad as quickly as possible after seeing the light. Representatives from each species took turns. The Teluvi, whose crystalline bodies processed light differently, were fastest at 2.3 seconds. The Krell were slowest at 4.9 seconds. Martinez, when her turn came, registered 1.7 seconds. Impressive, admitted a Krell officer, but not dramatically different. This was a simple test with a clear signal and expected response, Frost explained. The real differences emerge in more complex situations. The next demonstration involved navigating a simple obstacle course. Again, Martinez performed well, but not exceptionally better than the aliens. High Commander Velzar seemed unimpressed. These tests show nothing about why you keep your military away from diplomatic functions. Because these exercises don't trigger what we're trying to demonstrate, Martinez said quietly. With your permission, Ambassador, I'd like to try something different. Frost hesitated, then nodded. Proceed, but with caution. Martinez turned to the alien delegates. What I'm about to demonstrate requires a volunteer. I promise no harm will come to anyone, but I need someone willing to assist me. After some discussion, a Krell officer named Grosh stepped forward. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, his thick exoskeleton giving him a formidable appearance. What must I do? Grosh asked. A simple exercise, Martinez explained. You will stand 3 meters away from me. When Ambassador Frost gives the signal, you will approach me and try to touch my shoulder. That's all. The setup seemed almost childishly simple. Grosh stood at the marked distance, while Martinez stood relaxed, hands at her sides. This demonstration will show reaction to perceived threat, Frost explained to the watching delegates. Officer Grosh, please approach Ms. Martinez, at whatever speed you would normally use in a non-combat situation. Frost raised her hand, then lowered it as a signal to begin. Grosh moved forward with what was, for a Krell, moderate speed. To the watching aliens, he appeared to be moving at a reasonable pace. What happened next left the room in stunned silence. Before Grosh had covered half the distance, Martinez had already moved. With fluid precision, she sidestepped his approach, used his momentum against him, and in one smooth motion had the much larger alien off balance. She didn't strike or harm Grosh in any way, but suddenly she was behind him, her hand lightly touching a specific point on his exoskeleton, a point that the Krell and everyone else in the room realized was one of the few vulnerable spots in Krell anatomy. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. What? How did you? Grosh stammered, regaining his balance. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. The Valaxian delegates in particular seemed disturbed. That is quite enough, High Commander Velzar said sharply. This human clearly has combat training. Yes, Ambassador Frost admitted. Kelly Martinez is actually Lieutenant Martinez of Earth's Special Operations Division. She has been retired from active duty for this demonstration. You claimed she was a civilian, Velzar accused. For today, she is, Frost replied calmly. And that's precisely the point we're trying to make. Human military training doesn't simply go away because we remove the uniform. Martinez stepped forward. What you just witnessed was a standard defensive reaction. Officer Grosh wasn't harmed because I maintained control, but in a real situation, with actual perceived threat, that response would have been much faster and much more decisive. How did you know about the vulnerability in Krell anatomy? Asked one of the Krell delegates. Standard xenobiology training for all human military personnel, Martinez answered honestly. We study the physiological strengths and weaknesses of all known sentient species. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Now perhaps you understand, Frost said into the silence. Human military personnel are trained to react to threats with a speed that most species find alarming. In diplomatic settings, where cultural misunderstandings are common, having humans with this training present creates unnecessary risks. It's not about disrespect, Martinez added. It's about safety, yours and ours. Velzar studied Martinez with new understanding. In his yellow eyes, how many like you does Earth have? All human military personnel receive similar training, Martinez replied. Some are better than others, of course. I'm considered above average but not exceptional. This wasn't entirely true. Martinez was among the top-rated special operators in Earth's forces, but Earth Command had decided that some things were better left undisclosed. I believe, said the Undari representative, Science Attaché Zivkil, that we owe Earth an apology. We mistook prudence for disrespect. No apology is necessary, Frost assured him. Cultural differences are to be expected and worked through. That's why we're all here. As the delegates began to disperse, discussing what they had witnessed, Officer Grosh approached Martinez. That was educational, the Krell said. In my culture, it would be appropriate to ask for a rematch, but I suspect the outcome would be the same. Martinez smiled. Maybe someday, under different circumstances. After the demonstration, Martinez returned to her quarters. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands slightly trembling, now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Her communication device chimed. "Well done, Lieutenant," came General Murphy's voice. "Ambassador Frost reports that the demonstration achieved its purpose without incident." "Thank you, sir," Martinez replied. "Do you think they understand now?" "They're beginning to," Murphy said, "and sometimes beginning to understand is enough. The true reason Earth never sends their military to peace summits was becoming clear to their alien allies. It wasn't fear or arrogance, it was humanity's recognition of their own deadly efficiency and their choice to keep it leashed for the sake of peace." The main peace summit convened 3 days after Lieutenant Martinez's demonstration. The Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Station was filled with representatives from 27 different species. Banners and flags hung from the high ceiling, representing each member world of the Galactic Concordat. Ambassador Elaine Frost sat at the Earth delegation's table, flanked by Daniel Garcia and 2 other diplomatic aides. The empty chair that had caused so much controversy in previous summits remained empty, but the atmosphere had changed. There were no accusatory glances, no whispered comments about human arrogance. High Commander Velzar of the Valaxians approached the Earth table before the session began. He offered the formal Valaxian greeting, which Frost returned perfectly. "Ambassador Frost," he said, his voice carrying none of the previous disdain. "The Valaxian hegemony wishes to formally withdraw its complaint regarding Earth's diplomatic protocols." "Thank you, High Commander," Frost replied. "I hope recent demonstrations have helped clarify our position." "They have indeed." Velzar paused, choosing his words carefully. "We had mistaken caution for disrespect. It seems we have much to learn about human capabilities." "As we have much to learn about all species in the Concordat," Frost said diplomatically. "Cultural understanding is a long process." After Velzar moved on, Garcia leaned toward Frost. "That went better than expected. Lieutenant Martinez made quite an impression," Frost replied quietly. "Though I suspect she showed them only a fraction of what she's actually capable of." The summit began with the traditional speeches and welcomes. When it came time for Earth's statement, Frost approached the central podium. The room fell silent, many delegates curious about what Earth would say after the recent controversies. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Concordat," Frost began, her voice clear and confident. "Earth thanks you for the honor of participating in this Centennial Peace Summit. Today I wish to address a matter that has caused some confusion among our valued allies." She paused, looking around the room. "Since joining the interstellar community 15 years ago, Earth has maintained a policy known as the Separation Protocol, our practice of sending only civilian diplomatic representatives to interstellar functions. Some have interpreted this as a sign of disrespect or disinterest in security matters. Nothing could be further from the truth." Frost gestured toward the empty chair at the Earth table. "That empty seat represents not absence, but presence. It represents Earth's commitment to peace, a commitment so deep that we recognize when certain capabilities should be held in reserve." A murmur ran through the assembly as translation devices conveyed her words to all present. "In recent days, some of you have witnessed demonstrations that helped explain our position. For those who haven't, I would like to present a formal proposal. An educational exchange program where civilian specialists from Earth can share information about human history, psychology, and training methods with interested member worlds." Frost loaded her presentation onto the central display system. The screen showed details of the proposed program, cultural exchanges, training methods, historical context, all designed to help alien species understand humans better without revealing too much about human military capabilities. "We don't wish to seem superior or threatening," Frost continued, "but we've evolved in ways that make our combat personnel fundamentally different from yours. This program will help bridge that gap in understanding." When she finished speaking, there was a moment of silence before the assembly erupted in approving sounds. The clicks hums and vocalizations of 27 different species signaling their support. The rest of the summit proceeded smoothly. The Galactic Concordat accepted Earth's proposal unanimously. By the final day, plans were already being made for the first educational exchanges. In the observation lounge overlooking the main docking bay, Lieutenant Martinez watched as delegates began boarding their ships to return home. She had changed back into her gray civilian clothes, her temporary role as demonstrator complete. Ben Hoffman, a civilian analyst from Earth Intelligence, joined her at the viewport. "Quite a view," he said, nodding at the various alien ships. "It is," Martinez agreed. "How do you think it went?" "Better than expected. The Krell are particularly interested in the exchange program. They've requested specialized training seminars on human combat psychology." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Are we really going to teach potential adversaries about how we fight?" Hoffman smiled. "We'll teach them what Earth Command decides they should know. Just enough to understand why we keep certain things separate, not enough to use against us." They watched in silence as a Valaxian ship detached from the station and moved gracefully into open space. "They still don't really get it, do they?" Martinez mused. Hoffman shook his head. "How could they? None of them evolved on a world where their own species was their greatest predator." Martinez looked down at her hands that could field strip, a weapon in darkness that knew exactly where to strike on a dozen different alien physiologies thanks to classified xenobiology studies, hands trained to kill with or without weapons. "It's not just our training," she said quietly. "It's that unlike every other spacefaring species, we never stopped being dangerous to survive. We became more dangerous because we could. That's the part we can never fully explain to them," Hoffman agreed. "How do you tell peaceful species that humans developed art, music, literature, and science alongside increasingly efficient ways to kill each other?" Ambassador Frost joined them, having concluded her final meetings. "Lieutenant Mr. Hoffman, I'm glad I found you both. Earth Command sends their congratulations on a successful mission." "Thank you, Ambassador," Martinez replied. "What happens now? Now we build on what we've started. The educational exchange program begins next month. We've already had 12 species sign up for the first round." "And the separation protocol?" Hoffman asked. "Remains in place," Frost said firmly. "But now our allies understand why, which makes everything easier." As they began walking toward their ship, Frost added, "The Andari representative said something interesting to me today. He said they used to think humans were weak because we lacked natural weapons or defenses. Now they wonder if the rest of the galaxy is safe precisely because we lack those things, because it forced us to become so much more dangerous through ingenuity." "Is the galaxy safe from us?" Martinez asked quietly. Frost considered this. "I believe so. The very fact that we recognize our own capacity for violence and choose to control it speaks well of our species." The Earth diplomatic ship departed Nexus Station the next morning. As the stars streaked by in the viewport beside her, Martinez reflected on what had been accomplished. The true reason Earth never sends their military to peace summits had been partially revealed, and their alien allies had begun to understand. It wasn't fear that kept human soldiers away from diplomatic tables. It wasn't arrogance or disrespect for alien traditions. It was because humanity had the wisdom to recognize their own nature, to know that the same qualities that made them survivors on their harsh homeworld could make them dangerous to the peace they genuinely desired. The separation. Protocol would continue. Earth would keep its warriors leashed, not to hide them, but to protect the fragile piece of a galaxy that had never known a species quite like humanity, a species that had mastered the art of war so thoroughly that they chose to set it aside whenever possible. As the ship accelerated toward Earth, Martinez knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by showing their strength, but by showing their wisdom in knowing when not to reveal it.